Yes.
There it goes. Great.
So, like you see, there is a lot of text, so please bear with me. Okay. But now, because I have to somehow change. Do you see yourself on the screen?
No, we don't have to see ourselves. We see you next to the screen.
Okay. All right. So in case you have any questions or something doesn't work, just tell me, because now I don't see you. So within my talk, I will raise a lot of concept questions and issues, and I hope this will be like a catalyst for further discussion. And I already see some correlation with what Lucas said and what Marta generously brought. So I will just start. So indeed, I will talk on not only ethical and moral complexities, and I would bring and would like to focus also on the notion of risk and contamination and what is it, how I understand it, I will explain. So what does art do? This is a question that we should actually ask when discussing art that works with living bodies, that manipulates living bodies. These are some of the artworks that Lucas mentioned. And these are works that usually are said to blur the boundaries between life and death, nature, culture, and by culture I mean technology, human and human, but also challenges the essentialist assumption of, definition of what is life, what is a body, what is a human, what is an identity, what is nature, what is technology, what is moral good. So in that sense, it finally asks who has the right to decide upon these definition and ways of the implementation into social, cultural, and economic practices. So when you look at this mapping of questions and challenging certain assumptions, you see that artists that work with living bodies and use tools that traditionally are not recognized as an artistic and design medium blur not only disciplinary boundaries, but also ontological and ethical. So as art, as a creative practice, does not only represent reality, but it creates a reality, making it multiple and changing. All right, so what is ontology and what is ethics? I will just shortly explain because it's important in order to understand the implication of the challenges and the scope of the discussion that we are actually dealing with. So ontology as the question of what is life, what is consciousness within the philosophical discipline. It is connected to metaphysics. Epistemology is part also of philosophical discipline, but it's also a part and creates a methodology of science that asks question, how do we gather knowledge? What is valid knowledge? How do we know what is true or false? So these are questions very often also scientific that belongs to science, what is understood as hard science, and ethics, where we ask question: how do we live? How do we shape relations of value and norms? So it is not morality. Morality is a set of already fixed values, fixed rules, and ethics asks the question how those rules are established, how they function, what are the values that we ask to be summum bonum, so the highest good. So when you look at this this disciplinary questions that shape and make borders between discipline, when you look at this tradition of how we shape discipline according to these questions, you see that art actually blurs them and makes connection and creates a condition where it brings ontological, so highly philosophical discussion, scientific discussion, and ethical, social, moral into the table. So here speculation and creative fabulation with hands-on engagement becomes a field of focus, becomes a field of work and experimentation for art, where art stops being just a representation of reality. So it's not just mirroring, like very often we would say within the cultural analysis and art, that art is like a barometer of the society or cultural time. What I would like to bring into attention, that it's not anymore just a reflection, it's actually shaping a reality. So this brings me to to contemporary discussions within the cultural disciplines, but also what we now call new materialism, that grew from the feminist theory, where the understanding of this more relational, not only cross-disciplinary, but more the ontological understanding of what does it mean to live in discussion, that and I here put the quote of Rossi Bradotti, who indeed introduces this necessity for the non-anthropocentric shift in thinking, that importantly does not grow from the anti-humanist or deconstructive assumption, but rather from this affirmation, material affirmation and transdisciplinary necessity for relational and vital understanding of our various ways of being, knowing, and acting. So again, ontology, epistemology, and ethics. And within my own, further focus within this new material or post-humanist theory, I focus more on affect theory, which studies understand bodies and understand our life within this notion of affect as an encounter, as a transformative encounter. And here our bodies understood that are conditioned by affect, as contamination. So this is a little bit my take on what is affect as an encounter. Okay, I know that I'm really simplifying things. So for those who know a little bit more, please just bear with me, and I would be really happy to talk about it further. So here I'm proposing actually to indeed, while following this relational take that I found within art that works with living matter, to see bodies, to see this relational understanding as contamination. Well, contamination, it's not something, it's not a consequence, it's not something that it has to be understood as within the terms of some pejorative thinking, but as a condition, as an ontological condition of our living bodies that expresses bodies' relational, mutating, transformative, constantly transformative character. And this is, I think, something that already Marta brought in her work. So that our bodies have never been pure, that we are porous, leaky bodies conditioned by encounters with multiple human and non-human bodies. So here are not only humans, but also animals, plants, bacteria, viruses, particles, thoughts, experiences, minerals, and so on. So in that sense, in contamination, we find our ways of symbiotic survival and sustenance, creativity and care. But importantly, contamination is not something that is neutral, right? It's not something that is without implication. It cannot be controlled. It cannot be in that sense commodified, because it is our ontological state. And as Spinoza was writing, so I follow here within the new materialist tradition, Spinoza, of course, we do not know what a body can do, what its capacities are, until we test it. So each encounter, contamination implies that each encounter may change you, transform you. You may flourish when meeting another body, mutate or die. Therefore, living within contamination is living within the omnipresence and inescapability of uncertainty. It is not a state of choice or control, but care. And this is something that I put it here, the link to my article I recently published, exploring these ideas further. But what I would like to, going back to, why I'm talking about contamination in the lecture about ethics, because there is a shift within the art practice that works with living matters. There is a particular shift in thinking from, epistemological inquiry into what can I know, into what must I do and what can I hope. And it is a transformation from epistemology into ethology, which I explore as affect. So here, again, just as a reminder, so epistemology is focusing on knowledge, while ethology is focusing on the relationality of bodies, relationality as a condition of our bodies, and therefore, in order to understand our bodies, we need to investigate the implication of this relationality, conditions of this relationality. So more ecological understanding of bodies. All right, so implication of practicing bodies as already relational. And here we are already within the ethical discussions. So it means that bodies are fluid. They are beyond essentialist identities. There are no essences of what a body is or should be. So forget about the normative adjectives as natural, essential. The implication or the consequences of operating within the ethological discussion and the ethological condition is that we do not have fixed rules of how to practice bodies. Bodies are changing, mutating. Each time we relate, encounter, we influence and contaminate each other. It is the condition of actually our bodies. So ways of how to act must be thus constantly attuned to bodies in relation. They must allow bodies to change and mutate while ensuring their capacity to thrive. So while ensuring their capacity to continue to mutate and continue to encounter and change and transform further. This stands, of course, in contrast with what we now understood as institutional ethics, right? When you think about the ethical committees, when you think about the moral norms that that condition, the political structure, the social structure. And this is something that please forgive me the pronunciation, so Dufremantel, in her book In Praise of Risk. I strongly recommend this book for those who are interested. Who noticed how this understanding of risk, that is the life intensity, became indeed a commodified value, and this cannot be more actual than these days of pandemia, where risk is absorbed by the market, made omnipresent and therefore unquestioned. We are trained by the commodification of risk through its management. And here I would also like to, just remind that already a lot of scholars were talking about, within the biopolitical understanding of our bodies and about risk management, how it influences and shape, not only particular decision making within the institution, but actually our lives. And here I'm referring to Heather Paxson notion of Pasteurianism. She's talking about post-Pasteurianism. And here a quote from her that it's biopolitics predicted on the indirect control of human bodies through direct control over bodies. It contributes to the production of rational risk, minimizing subjects, and to a governmentality devoted to managing public risks. So, in that sense, art practicing ethology as this ethics of contamination, where risk rather than managed and controlled is practiced to and conditioned, is not neutral. So we are so the question is, what are the presupposition of a particular manipulation of bodies that we should ask, and the artists that are investigating and challenging particular assumption bring into question. So it is about establishing certain borders, enforcing certain hierarchies between bodies, and giving ideas of what should be. What are the implications of manipulation for the meaning and practicing of bodies? So ethology as this ethics of contamination practice within art that works with living bodies, that manipulates living bodies, means that you bring into the table all these questions as implication of the other way around. So it brings into the table implication as an important, if not conditioning argument and value for the question whether we manipulate, how do we do it, how do we control, why do we control, who controls certain manipulations. So in that sense, risk as such becomes a practice of depending on change, of allowing to be changed and anticipating the implication of changing orders, where both bodies are not only the chosen one can flourish. And it involves above all care and attention to changing reality, not relying and trusting in the set of rules of control and institutional hierarchies. And I should stop here. I don't know what's the time, but yes, I would love to, open this for the discussion further.